The silver blade caught moonlight for half a heartbeat before it plunged downward. 14-year-old Eli didn't think, he just moved. The assassin's weapon, meant to pierce the heart of 6-year-old Rowan, buried itself deep into Eli's chest instead. As the orphan boy crumpled into blood-stained snow, Alpha King Theron watched from 30 yards away, frozen in a moment that would shatter everything he believed about honor, sacrifice, and worth. In that split second, as crimson bloomed across white powder, the most powerful wolf in the Northern Territories realized he understood nothing about courage. What happened in the next 3 days would expose a betrayal 15 years in the making and reveal a conspiracy so devastating it would bring the entire Silvercrest pack to its knees. Secrets buried in blood would rise. Wolves would challenge their own alpha. And an ancient debt would finally be answered. But first, someone had to survive the night. Most people never noticed Eli at all. That's exactly how he wanted it. For 9 months, the 14-year-old had lived in a hidden cave system beyond the outer markers of Silvercrest Pack territory. It wasn't much, just a narrow opening in the cliff face that widened into a small chamber, barely tall enough to stand in. But it was hidden behind a curtain of frozen vines, dry enough when he blocked the wind with scavenged canvas, and most importantly, invisible to wolf patrols. When you were a kid trying to survive alone in wolf territory, invisible meant alive. Eli had a rule that had kept him breathing for the 9 months he'd been living in the borderlands. Never be seen, never be remembered, never draw wolf attention. He moved like a shadow through his days. Before dawn, he'd crawl from his cave, stuff his few possessions into a torn canvas sack, and disappear into the forest before the first patrol passed. He'd spend his mornings in the human settlement 6 miles south, picking through market scraps, collecting bottles for the penny deposit, keeping his head down, staying forgettable. By midday, he'd trade his gatherings at the general store, usually enough for stale bread and sometimes, if he'd had a lucky morning, a wedge of hard cheese. The afternoons were for survival training. He'd practice moving silently, reading tracks, identifying edible plants even under snow. Everything his mother had taught him before everything ended. But as the sun began its descent, Eli always returned to his vantage point. There was a specific outcropping of rocks a quarter-mile from the main forest road, hidden by ancient pines but offering a clear view of the path below. From there, concealed behind stone and shadow, he could see almost everything that happened on the route between Silvercrest Keep and the Southern Territories. He watched the wolves come and go. Massive warriors in human form, their leather and fur radiating authority and danger. Men and women who moved with the kind of lethal grace that came from knowing exactly how dangerous they were. Eli had survived long enough to recognize real predators when he saw them. These wolves were apex. But he also noticed something else. He noticed how they looked out for each other. How a warrior would pause to check on a younger pack member. How they'd share kills after a hunt, passing meat to the weakest first. How they'd work together to clear a fallen tree from the path, coordinating without words. It was the kind of belonging Eli had known once, briefly, before his mother died. The kind that made something inside his chest ache with a longing he couldn't name and didn't dare want. But more than anything else, he watched the child. Every afternoon around dusk, a royal convoy traveled the forest road. 6 guards in formation, weapons visible, surrounding an ornate sleigh pulled by 2 massive grey wolves. And in the center, wrapped in fur-lined cloaks that probably cost more than Eli would see in his lifetime, sat a small boy with dark hair and careful eyes. The Alpha King's son. Rowan. Eli had heard the name whispered in the human settlements, the heir to Silvercrest, the future of the bloodline, the child the entire pack treasured like spun gold. Eli watched him every day. Watched how Rowan would peer out at the forest with curiosity his guards never saw. Watched how the boy's shoulders would slump slightly when he thought no one was looking, as if the weight of being precious was its own kind of prison. Watched how Rowan would sometimes reach out toward the trees, as if wanting to touch something wild and free. There was something about the young prince that reminded Eli of himself, alone even when surrounded by people. Protected but not truly safe. Seen but not really known. For 9 months, Eli had maintained his perfect invisibility. For 9 months, he'd watched the wolves and their prince pass by, telling himself it wasn't his business, wasn't his world, wasn't his problem to care about. For 9 months, he'd survived by being nobody to everyone. Then came the coldest day of winter. Eli was weaker than usual. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, the settlements having been picked clean by other desperate souls. His fingers were numb, even wrapped in cloth, his breath coming in visible clouds. He almost didn't go to his watching spot. Almost stayed in his cave, conserving energy. But something pulled him there. Some instinct he'd learned to trust. He watched the royal convoy approach right on schedule, the sleigh's runners hissing softly through fresh snow. But something was wrong. The birds had gone silent. The wind carried a scent that didn't belong, foreign steel and killing intent. The guards hadn't noticed, but Eli's survival instincts were screaming. Then he saw them. 3 figures in dark cloaks materialized from positions the guards had never checked. They moved with the precision of trained assassins, converging on the sleigh from calculated angles. Professional. Lethal. Inevitable. The lead assassin raised a blade, silver-tipped, designed to kill wolves, aimed directly at Rowan's heart. Time slowed. Eli saw the trajectory, calculated the distance, knew the outcome. Every survival instinct he'd honed over 9 months of living alone screamed at him to stay hidden. This wasn't his fight. Wasn't his responsibility. Wasn't his world. But he saw Rowan's face, a child who'd done nothing wrong except be born into danger. And Eli remembered being 5 years old, watching his mother die while he hid, silent and safe and useless. Not again. Eli broke his only rule. He ran. 30 yards had never felt so far. Theron crashed through the snow, his wolf senses screaming with the scent of blood. Too much blood. His guards had already subdued 2 of the assassins. The third lay dead with a wolf's fangs still locked in his throat. But none of that mattered. All that mattered was the boy. Rowan was alive, sobbing but unharmed, clutched in Garrett's arms. And beside the sleigh, crumpled in crimson-stained snow, lay a child Theron had never seen before. A ragged, too-thin boy with a silver blade buried in his chest, right where his son's heart should have been. The Alpha King dropped to his knees, hands hovering over the wound, afraid to touch, afraid to make it worse. The boy's eyes were half open, unseeing, his lips blue with shock and cold. Each breath was a wet, rattling gasp. Who is he? Garrett demanded, still holding the crying prince. Where did he come from? Theron didn't answer. He couldn't. Because as he knelt there, something impossible happened. From every direction. Glowing eyes emerged from the darkness between the trees. Dozens of pairs. Then hundreds. The wolves were coming, not just his patrol, but wolves from miles away, converging with supernatural speed. They materialized from the forest like ghosts, moving in absolute silence. And as they reached the clearing, they did something Theron had never witnessed in 35 years as Alpha. They bowed. Every single wolf lowered their heads in submission, a gesture reserved only for royalty, only for pack. The sight sent ice down Theron's spine. His guards froze, confusion and shock radiating from them in waves. What are they doing? One whispered. Theron had no answer. He only knew one thing with absolute certainty. We need Myra. Now. Already here. The voice came from behind him. Theron spun to find the pack healer, ancient, silver-haired Myra, standing at the clearing's edge as if she'd been waiting. Her weathered face was grim but unsurprised. How did you? Theron started. The wolf summoned me before you did. Myra moved forward with surprising speed, her apprentice trailing behind with supplies. Before the boy even fell, I felt it through the bond. Every wolf in 50 miles felt it. She knelt beside Eli, placed her gnarled hands on either side of the wound. Her eyes closed, and when she opened them, they were glowing with ancient power. Silver through the chest, a finger's width from his heart. Her voice was clinical, detached. He should already be dead. Can you save him? Rowan's small voice cut through the tension. The boy had squirmed free from Garrett and now stood beside Theron, tears streaming down his face. Please. He saved me. He has to be okay. Myra didn't answer immediately. She was cutting away the boy's threadbare shirt, revealing a torso marked with old scars, the kind that spoke of hard survival, of winters barely endured. As the fabric fell away, something else fell with it. A pendant on a leather cord, tarnished but unmistakable. Theron's breath stopped. The silver wolf crest gleamed dully in the moonlight, the mark of the blood brothers, an oath bond so sacred only 3 had ever been forged. Theron wore one around his own neck. The second had been buried with his mate 5 years ago. And the third. That's impossible, Theron whispered, reaching for the pendant with shaking hands. This belonged to Kale. The name fell like a stone into water, ripples of reaction spreading through every wolf present. Kale. The blood brother. The traitor. The man Theron had executed 15 years ago for selling pack secrets. The man whose family had disappeared into the wilderness afterward, presumed dead. Garrett moved closer, staring at the pendant. Kale had a son. The boy was 4 when. Elias. Myra's voice was soft. His name was Elias. This boy would be 14 now. The math was simple and devastating. Theron's mind reeled backward, memory pulling him into the past against his will. Kale, laughing during training. Kale, standing beside him during his mate's funeral, the only one who knew how to help. Kale, who'd sworn the blood oath at 16, promised to protect Theron's family as his own. Then the evidence. Documents proving Kale had sold territorial maps to rival packs. Testimony from merchants who'd seen him meeting with enemies. Silver found hidden in his quarters, payment for betrayal. Theron had given Kale a chance to explain. His blood brother had only said, "I'm innocent. But I understand why you can't believe me." The execution had been swift. Merciful, Theron had told himself. But Kale's mate, Elena, had looked at him with such hatred before she'd fled with her son. She'd never believed the charges. She'd been right not to. The evidence was planted. Garrett's voice cut through Theron's spiral. The beater was examining the dead assassins, and his face had gone pale. These markings, he yanked back a sleeve, revealing a sigil burned into the flesh. That's House Draven's mark. Cain. Theron's cousin. Next in line if Rowan died. The pieces slammed together with sickening clarity. Cain had framed Kale to remove a rival 15 years ago. And now he'd sent assassins to eliminate Rowan, to clear his path to the throne. But Kale's son, the boy everyone thought was dead, had somehow survived. Had been living alone in the territories. Had sacrificed himself for a prince he didn't even know. Why? Theron's voice cracked. Why did the wolves bow to him? Myra's hands never stopped working, packing the wound with herbs that glowed faintly. Because they've been protecting him. What? The wolves knew. The healer's ancient eyes met Theron's. They recognized Kale's bloodline. For 9 months, they've watched this child survive in our territories. Leaving game near his cave. Keeping predators away. Guiding him to safe paths. You knew. Theron's rage ignited. You all knew, and no one told me. We honored a debt. The voice came from the largest she-wolf in the circle, Elder Kira, who rarely took human form anymore. She stood now, naked and unashamed in the snow, her eyes burning with ancient authority. Kale died for a crime he didn't commit. His blood was spilled unjustly. The wolves do not forget such things. His dying, Rowan sobbed, clutching Theron's arm. Can't you do the pack bond? Like when father saved me from fever. That's only for pack members, Theron started. Or for blood debts, Myra interrupted. The wolves consider him pack. They've been protecting him as one of ours. The bond will recognize that. The emergency bond ritual. It would tie Eli's life force directly to the pack, to Theron himself. An irreversible connection, reserved for family, for those deemed worth saving at any cost. Garrett gripped Theron's shoulder. If you bond him, you acknowledge him. As Kale's heir. As someone with a legitimate claim to protection and status. If Cain finds out. Let him. Theron's voice was steel. Prepare the ritual. Now. Myra worked quickly, drawing symbols in the snow around Eli's body. The wolves moved closer, forming a living circle. Theron knelt, placed his hand over the boy's heart, over the wound he'd taken for Rowan, and began speaking words in the old tongue, words that predated human language. The pack responded, their voices rising in a haunting chorus. Power flooded through Theron, through every wolf present, converging on the dying child. Light flared, brilliant and blinding. The bond snapped into place like a physical thing, and suddenly Theron could feel Eli, weak, fading, terrified, but fighting. Live, Theron commanded, pouring everything he had into that single word. Live. The boy's back arched. He gasped, a real breath this time, not that terrible rattle. The silver wound began to close, slowly, painfully, but closing. Color returned to his lips. The wolves howled in unison, accepting Eli into the pack collective. When the light faded, Eli's eyes fluttered open. Confused. Terrified. His gaze darted around the circle of wolves, then landed on Rowan, who was crying with relief. Where? Eli's voice was barely a whisper. Where's Rowan? I'm here. The prince pushed forward. You saved me. You're going to be okay. Eli's body relaxed slightly at the confirmation. Then his eyes found Theron, found the Alpha crest on his chest, and fear flooded his features. You're the Alpha King. I am. Theron kept his voice gentle despite the storm raging inside him. Eli's gaze dropped to the pendant in Theron's hand, his pendant, his father's pendant, and his face went white as snow. That's my father's, he whispered, and there was such longing, such grief in his voice that Theron's heart shattered. I know, Theron managed. I know who you are, Elias. And I know what I did to your father. Eli's eyes filled with tears he was clearly too proud to shed. You killed him. Yes. There was no point in denial. And I was wrong. 3 days crawled by like wounded animals. Eli lay in a bed that was too soft, in a room that was too warm, surrounded by walls that felt like a trap. The healers had moved him to a chamber in Silvercrest Keep, guest quarters, they'd called it, though the locked door and posted guards told a different story. Not a prisoner, they insisted. Protected. Eli knew the difference was thinner than they pretended. He'd been conscious since the second night, though he'd kept his eyes closed for hours, listening, learning. 3 guards rotated shifts outside his door. The window was 40 feet above rocky ground, survivable if desperate, but not in his current condition. His belongings, including his father's pendant, were gone. And every time the door opened, he catalogued the hallway beyond, counting steps, marking turns, planning escape routes he was too weak to use. Old habits died hard. Or rather, they kept you alive. When Theron finally entered alone on the 3rd evening, Eli was sitting up, his back against the headboard, eyes tracking the Alpha King's every movement like a cornered animal watching a predator. How are you feeling? Theron's voice was careful, measured. Eli said nothing. Words were commitments, and he'd learned not to commit to anything. Theron pulled a chair closer but didn't sit, as if trying not to loom. From his pocket, he withdrew the silver pendant, let it dangle between them. Where did you get this? It's mine. Eli's first words in 3 days came out rougher than he'd intended. It belonged to someone I knew. Someone important to me. It belonged to my father. Eli's eyes locked on the pendant with desperate hunger. It was the only thing he had left of his old life, and they'd taken it from him. Theron was quiet for a long moment, then sat, holding the pendant out. Tell me about him. Please. The please surprised Eli. Alpha Kings didn't say please. But the rawness in Theron's voice sounded real, and Eli was so tired of carrying the weight alone. My mother's name was Elena. The words came slowly, painfully, like pulling arrows from flesh. She told me my father was Kale. That he was a hero who died protecting the pack. That the Alpha King had to execute him because evidence said he was a traitor, but she never believed it. Theron's face crumpled, but Eli continued, the dam breaking. The night he died, she took me and ran. I was 4. I remember her crying. We lived in the woods, moving constantly. She taught me to hunt, to hide, to read wolf signs. Said we couldn't go near packs because they'd kill us. Because of what you did to my father. Elias. Eli. The correction was sharp. Only my mother called me Elias. Theron nodded, throat working. Eli. What happened to your mother? The question Eli had been dreading. The memory he'd spent 9 years trying to bury. When I was 5, hunters found us. Not wolves, men with crossbows and silver nets. My mother hid me in a hollow tree, told me to stay quiet no matter what I heard. Told me to run if she didn't come back by sunrise. His voice cracked. She screamed. I heard her scream, and I stayed hidden like a coward. And she never came back. You were 5 years old. You survived. That's not cowardice, that's what she wanted. I've been alone since then. Eli pushed forward, not wanting sympathy. 9 years. Moving through territories, staying ahead of winter, avoiding packs. I learned to read wolf patterns, to tell which forests were claimed and which were contested. I came to Silvercrest territory 9 months ago because game was plentiful and the patrols were predictable. The wolves left you alone. I thought I was lucky. Eli laughed bitterly. Thought I was just good at hiding. I didn't know they were protecting me. Theron leaned forward, elbows on his knees, the pendant still clutched in one hand. Your father was my blood brother. We swore an oath when we were 16, to protect each other's families as our own. And I failed you. I failed Elena. I failed Cale. You killed him. The anger Eli had been suppressing erupted. My mother said you had to, that the evidence proved treason, but she never believed it. And then we had nothing. No pack, no protection, no home. I've been alone since I was 5 years old because you believed a lie. The accusation hung between them, sharp as the blade that had pierced Eli's chest. You're right. Theron's voice was barely above a whisper. And I can't undo it. I can't give you back those years. But I can tell you the truth now, Cale was innocent. Before Eli could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Garrett entered without waiting for permission, his face grim. We have confirmation. The beater held up several documents. The merchant testimony against Cale? Paid off by Cain Draven. The silver found in Cale's quarters? Planted by one of Cain's household staff, the man confessed under questioning. The territorial maps supposedly sold to enemies? Forgeries. Every piece of evidence was manufactured. Theron stood, fury radiating from him. How long have you known? 48 hours. I wanted to be certain before. Cale was framed. Theron's voice could have cut steel. My cousin destroyed an innocent man to remove a rival. It gets worse. Garrett's expression darkened. I tracked down a hunter from 15 years ago, dying of lung rot in a human settlement. He confirmed Cain paid them to eliminate Elena and her son. Said they got the mother but the boy disappeared. They assumed he died in the wilderness. Eli's world tilted. The hunters hadn't been random. Someone had sent them. Someone had murdered his mother deliberately. Cain's been positioning himself as next in line for 15 years, Garrett continued. If Rowan dies, he inherits. The assassination attempt wasn't random, it was calculated. And now that Eli's existence is known, if Cain sees him as Cale's heir, as someone who could expose his crimes, he'll come for him. Theron finished, his jaw clenched. He'll try to finish what he started. Eli barely heard them. His mind was stuck on one truth. You executed an innocent man. My father did nothing wrong, and you killed him anyway. Yes. Theron turned to face him, and there were tears in the Alpha King's eyes. I failed him. I failed your mother. I failed you. And I will carry that guilt until I die. But I won't fail you again. Why should I believe you? Eli's voice broke. Why should I trust anything you say? Because I'm not asking you to trust me for my sake. Theron moved closer. I'm asking you to stay alive. Cain knows you exist now. He knows you're Cale's son, that you're a witness to his conspiracy. He'll come for you, and out there alone, you won't survive. I've survived for 9 years. Against nature. Against winter. Against random predators. Theron's voice was urgent. Not against a calculated enemy with resources and patience. Please, Eli. Let me protect you. I don't need protection. I need, Eli stopped, because he didn't know how to finish. What did he need? Justice? Family? A past that wasn't soaked in blood? You need a place to heal. The small voice came from the doorway. Rowan stood there in sleeping clothes, clearly supposed to be in bed. And maybe you need people who care if you're okay. The young prince crossed to Eli's bed, climbed up beside him with the fearlessness of a child who'd been saved and couldn't forget it. You didn't save me because you wanted something, Rowan said seriously. You did it because it was right. That's what Papa says, that real courage is doing right even when it costs you everything. Eli stared at the boy, this small prince who should have been nothing to him, and felt something crack in his chest. I don't know anything about pack law or bloodlines, Eli finally said, looking at Theron. I saw a kid about to die, and I couldn't let it happen. That's all. That's everything. Theron knelt beside the bed, meeting Eli at eye level. You're Kale's son. Under pack law, you have a legitimate claim to sanctuary, to protection, to justice for what was done to your family. I'm offering you that. A place here. Safety. A chance to stop running. And if you change your mind. Eli's voice was small, vulnerable in a way he hated. What if you decide I'm a threat, too? What if I'm inconvenient or dangerous or? Then I'd be making the same mistake twice. Theron's hand hovered near Eli's shoulder, not touching, asking permission. I failed your father because I believed lies over loyalty. I won't repeat that. But I understand if you can't trust me. So here's what I'm asking. Stay until you're healed. Let Myra finish treating your wound. Eat real food, sleep in a real bed, regain your strength. Then, if you want to leave, I won't stop you. It was more than Eli had expected. Less than he wanted but more than he deserved. Until I'm healed, Eli agreed quietly. Then I decide. Fair enough. Rowan yawned, already half asleep against Eli's side. Theron moved to collect him, but the boy clung to Eli's shout. Can I stay? Just tonight. Eli looked to Theron, uncertain. The Alpha King's expression was unreadable, but he nodded. Just tonight. As Theron left, taking Garrett with him, Eli sat in the too-soft bed with the prince sleeping trustingly against his ribs, and wondered if this was what safety felt like. He didn't know if it was terrifying or comforting. Maybe both. That night, Eli woke gasping from a nightmare, hunters and blood and his mother's final scream. His chest heaved, panic clawing at his throat. A warm weight pressed against his side. Rowan, curled up and sleeping peacefully. Beyond the door, Eli heard the soft breathing of wolves, 3 of them, lying guard. For the first time in 9 years, he wasn't alone in the dark. He didn't know if that made the nightmares better or worse. 6 days after the Silver Blade nearly killed him, Eli stood before the assembled might of Silvercrest Pack and tried not to show fear. The Great Hall was a cavern carved from living stone, its walls lined with torches that cast dancing shadows across 50 pairs of eyes, all fixed on him. High-ranking wolves in human form sat in a perfect circle, their postures radiating judgment. At the far end, elevated on a natural stone throne, sat Theron, wearing the formal regalia of Alpha King, furs, leather, and a crown of twisted silver that caught the firelight. Eli had been fitted with clean clothes, simple but well-made, and his wound had healed enough that he could stand without swaying. Barely. Myra had wanted to wait another week, but Theron insisted the pack needed to decide now, before Cain heard about Eli's existence and made his move. Garrett stood beside Eli, a steady presence, while Rowan sat at Theron's right hand, dressed in formal robes that made him look even smaller. The council recognizes Alpha King Theron, an elder wolf announced, his voice echoing off stone. Theron rose, and the hall fell into absolute silence. I present Elias, son of Kale, blood of the Blood Brothers. His voice carried authority that made Eli's spine straighten involuntarily. 6 days ago, this boy threw himself between my son and an assassin's blade. He took Silver through the chest, a wound that should have killed him, to save a prince he didn't know, in a territory where he had no protection. Murmurs rippled through the circle. Eli felt their eyes weighing him, measuring, judging. The wolves themselves bowed to him, Theron continued. They have protected him in secret for 9 months, honoring a debt to his father. I performed the emergency bond ritual to save his life. He now carries our mark. I ask this council, do we accept him as pack? The question hung heavy in the air. A massive wolf with scarred knuckles and cold eyes stood. Councilman Brock, Eli recognized him from Garrett's briefing. Kale's rival. A man who'd supported the execution. The boy is human-born, untrained, a stranger to our ways. Brock's voice was granite. His father was executed as a traitor. What proof do we have the bloodline is untainted? That this isn't some elaborate deception? Agreement rumbled from several wolves. Eli's hands clenched at his sides. I have proof. The voice was ancient, female, and carried weight that made even Brock pause. Elder Kira rose from her seat, her silver hair falling past her waist, her eyes glowing faintly with wolf light. She rarely attended council, preferring the forest to politics, and her presence commanded instant respect. "I was there when Kale took the blood oath with Theron," she said, each word deliberate. "I watched him fight for this pack for 20 years. I saw him save dozens of lives, including Brock's, during the Northern Border Wars." Brock's jaw tightened, but he didn't interrupt. "And I know he was innocent." Kira's voice hardened. "I knew it 15 years ago, but I held my tongue because I had no proof, only instinct. I have regretted that silence every day since." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Kira never challenged Theron's judgment. For her to speak against the execution now was unprecedented. "You have proof now?" another councilwoman asked. "We do." Garrett stepped forward, laying documents on the central table. Testimony from paid witnesses recanting their statements. Confession from the household staff who planted evidence in Kale's quarters. Forensic analysis proving the territorial maps were forgeries. He paused, letting the weight settle. And the sigil of House Draven burned into the flesh of all 3 assassins who attacked Prince Rowan. The hall erupted. Wolves shouting, demanding answers, voices overlapping in fury and confusion. Theron's growl cut through the chaos like a blade. "Order." Silence crashed back. "Cain Draven orchestrated Kale's downfall 15 years ago," Theron said, his voice heavy with barely controlled rage. "He framed an innocent man to eliminate a rival. Then he sent hunters to murder Kale's mate and child, to erase all evidence of his crimes. The assassination attempt on my son was his next move, clear his path to the throne by eliminating the heir. And this boy." Brock gestured at Eli. "How convenient that Kale's supposedly dead son appears now, just as these revelations surface." "Convenient?" Eli's voice cracked like a whip before he could stop himself. Every eye snapped to him. "You think it was convenient watching my mother die when I was 5? Spending 9 years alone, starving through winters, running from predators? Yeah, real convenient." "Eli," Garrett warned quietly. But Eli was done being silent. "You want me to speak for myself? Fine. I don't know anything about pack law or bloodlines or politics. I've been surviving since I was 5 years old. I came to these territories because game was good and I thought I could make it through one more winter without dying. That's it." He met Brock's cold stare directly. "I didn't save Rowan because I wanted something from you. I didn't even know who he was. I just saw a kid about to get murdered, and I couldn't let it happen. If you don't want me here, I don't care. I never needed anyone before." The defiance in his voice echoed off stone walls. Several wolves looked taken aback. Others nodded slowly, as if seeing him clearly for the first time. Then Rowan's chair scraped loudly as the 6-year-old prince stood. "He's my brother now." Rowan's voice was small but determined. "The bond ritual made us family. Papa says the bond doesn't lie, it recognizes truth. And if you reject Eli, you reject me too." "Rowan," Theron started. "I'm invoking kinship law," Rowan continued, clearly reciting something he'd memorized. "By blood debt and bond right, I claim Elias as pack brother. Anyone who denies him denies the law." Stunned silence. The child had just invoked one of the oldest, most sacred protections in wolf culture. It was rarely used, almost never by someone so young, and it was legally binding. Brock looked like he'd swallowed something bitter. "The prince knows his law." Kira's weathered face creased into the faintest smile. "Then let the wolves decide." Traditional vote. One by one, wolves stood and shifted, not fully, just enough to let their animal nature show through. Eyes glowing, teeth lengthening, the air filling with the musk of wolf. They approached Eli in order of rank. Each wolf circled him once, scenting him, reading whatever truth wolves could read. Then, if they accepted him, they touched their nose to his outstretched hand. It was an ancient gesture. Sacred. Irrevocable. The first wolf, a grizzled warrior with scars across his muzzle, circled Eli twice before pressing his nose to Eli's palm. Acceptance. Then another. And another. Eli stood frozen as wolf after wolf acknowledged him. Some hesitant, some immediate, but all genuine. He felt the pack bond pulse with each touch, felt himself becoming woven into something larger than he'd ever imagined. Even Brock, last to approach, grudgingly conceded. "The boy has courage. That counts for something." When the last wolf had voted, Kira announced, Unanimous acceptance. The pack has spoken. Theron descended from his throne, placed a hand on Eli's shoulder. Elias, son of Kale, the pack recognizes you as bloodkin, under our protection. Do you accept this bond? Eli looked around the circle, at wolves who'd just claimed him, at Rowan whose face shone with joy, at Garrett who nodded encouragingly. His throat was tight, but he managed, I accept. Myra appeared with a carved wooden bowl and a silver needle. The marking. Eli had been warned about this part. He extended his right forearm. Myra dipped the needle in ink mixed with wolf blood and pack magic, then began marking the sigil into his skin. It burned, not painful exactly, but intensely present, as if his flesh was remembering something ancient. When finished, the pack symbol gleamed on his forearm, a wolf's head surrounded by 3 stars. Permanent. Binding. The hall erupted in howls, acceptance, celebration, welcome. Wolves surged forward, surrounding Eli with fierce embraces and claps on the back that nearly knocked him over. He was overwhelmed, drowning in touch after years of isolation. Rowan squeezed through the crowd and threw his arms around Eli's waist. See? I told you they'd love you. Eli looked down at the grinning prince and felt something crack open in his chest, something that might have been hope. But across the hall, he caught Garrett pulling Theron aside, their expressions grim. Eli's sharp hearing picked up fragments. We'll hear within hours. Knows his conspiracy is exposed. Come for the boy. Eli's stomach dropped. By accepting the pack's protection, he'd painted a target on his back. And worse, he'd made Rowan more vulnerable. The celebration continued around him, but Eli barely noticed anymore. That night, Eli stood on a stone balcony overlooking the forest, unable to sleep despite exhaustion. The pack mark on his arm throbbed faintly, a constant reminder he wasn't alone anymore. He wasn't sure if that feeling was comfort or weight. Can't sleep either. Eli turned to find Rowan in his nightclothes, barefoot despite the cold. You should be in bed. So should you. Rowan climbed onto the balcony railing, and Eli's hand shot out instinctively to steady him. The prince grinned. See? You already being a brother. I don't know how to be family, Rowan. You already are. You took a knife for me. That's what family does. Eli's throat tightened. Your father said the same thing. Because it's true. Rowan leaned against him. You'll get used to it. Having people who care. In the distance, a wolf howl cut through the night. Wrong tone, wrong rhythm. Eli tensed immediately. That's not normal, he said quietly. What is it? Warning. Danger. Eli's instinct screamed. Something's coming. The alarm bells shattered the night like breaking glass. Eli bolted upright in bed, instinct screaming before his conscious mind caught up. Beside him, Rowan stared groggily. Beyond the door, Eli heard running footsteps, shouted orders, the organized chaos of a fortress preparing for threat. Garrett burst through the door without knocking. Get dressed. Both of you. Now. What's happening? Rowan rubbed his eyes. We have visitors. Garrett's expression was granite. Cain Draven just arrived at the southern gate with 30 armed men, demanding entry under guest right law. Eli's blood turned to ice. Guest right. Ancient pack law. Theron's voice came from the doorway. The Alpha King was already in full armor, sword at his hip. If a wolf requests sanctuary, we're obligated to grant it unless we have proof of immediate threat. Refusing triggers automatic blood feud. So he's using your own laws against you. Eli understood survival tactics when he saw them. Smart bastard. Garrett's jaw clenched. We can't refuse without starting a civil war, and he knows it. Then we let him in, Theron decided, his voice cold as winter. But we watch every move. Garrett, double the guard on Rowan and Eli. No one gets near them without 3 witnesses. Within an hour, Cain Draven entered Silvercrest Keep. He was nothing like Eli expected. Not brutish or obviously dangerous, but polished, expensive clothes, confident stride, a smile that belonged at diplomatic functions. Dark hair graying at the temples, sharp eyes that missed nothing, and an authority that came from generations of noble breeding. He was, Eli realized with sick certainty, far more dangerous than any common thug. Cain bowed with perfect propriety to Theron in the Great Hall, his 30 mercenaries arranged behind him in disciplined formation. Cousin. I heard about the assassination attempt on young Rowan. I came immediately to offer my house's support and protection. The lie was so smooth even Eli almost believed it. Your concern is noted. Theron's voice gave nothing away. You'll forgive me for questioning the timing. Of course. Kane's eyes swept the hall, landing on Eli standing beside Rowan near the throne. His expression flickered, surprise, calculation, something darker. Before smoothing back to pleasant neutrality. And who is this? Silence stretched too long. A guest, Theron said finally. Under my protection. How intriguing. Kane's smile never wavered, but his eyes had gone cold. He has the look of someone I once knew. Eli forced himself not to react, but his hands were shaking. He clenched them into fists. Perhaps we could discuss matters over dinner? Kane suggested. I've traveled far, and your hospitality was always renowned. Protocol demanded acceptance. Theron nodded curtly. Tonight. Formal hall. The dinner was torture. Eli sat at the high table beside Rowan, across from Kane Draven, trying not to show how thoroughly unsettled he was. The great dining hall was filled with pack members and Kane's retinue, guards positioned strategically throughout. The food was elaborate, roasted venison, fresh bread, winter vegetables, but Eli could barely taste it. Because Kane was watching him. Studying him with the focused intensity of a predator assessing prey. You're quiet, young man. Kane addressed Eli directly, his tone friendly. What's your name? Eli. He kept his answer short, neutral. Just Eli? Kane's eyebrow raised. No family name. No family. The words came out harder than intended. How tragic. Kane sipped his wine. To be alone in the world. Though you seem to have found shelter with my cousin's pack. You must be someone quite special for the Alpha King to extend personal protection. The implication hung like poison in the air. Rowan, bless him, spoke up. He's my brother. He saved my life. Kane's eyes gleamed with something that might have been triumph. Your brother. How? Unexpected. The Alpha King must value loyalty very highly. I value sacrifice, Theron cut in, his voice edged with warning. Those who protect the innocent earn my protection in return. Of course. Kane smiled. Though families are fragile things, aren't they? One wrong choice, and they shatter completely. One piece of evidence, one betrayal, one moment of doubt, and everything falls apart. He was talking about Kale. About the execution. Taunting them with it. I wonder, cousin, Kane continued, if you've considered how dangerous it is to trust too quickly. After all, Kale was trusted once. He was your blood brother. And look how that ended. Theron's knuckles went white on his goblet. Papa, Rowan whispered, sensing the tension. I think, Kane said pleasantly, setting down his fork, that we should all remember that loyalty must be proven continuously. That the past has a way of repeating itself. And that some bloodlines carry complications. His eyes were fixed on Eli now, and there was no mistaking the threat. Eli couldn't breathe. The dining hall felt like it was closing in, the walls pressing closer, the air too thick. That smell, leather oil and something metallic, it was the same. The exact same scent from the hunters. From the night his mother died. Excuse me, Eli managed, standing abruptly. I need air. He made it to the corridor before his legs gave out. He collapsed against the stone wall, chest heaving, panic clawing at his throat. 9 years fell away in an instant, and he was 5 again, hiding in that hollow tree, listening to his mother scream. Eli. Theron's voice cut through the spiral. The Alpha King knelt beside him. Breathe. Look at me. It's him. Eli forced the words out between gasps. The scent, I remember it. The hunters who killed my mother, they smelled like that. Same leather oil. Same metal. He was there. He sent them. Theron's eyes flashed wolf gold with rage. You're certain? I was 5, but I remember everything from that night. Eli's hands were shaking violently. It's him. Kane killed my mother. Garrett appeared in the corridor. His asking where the boy went. Tell him Eli was overwhelmed by the formal dinner. First time in pack society. Theron helped Eli to his feet. We need proof. A confession. Let me be bait. Eli's voice was steadier than he felt. He wants me dead. Let him try. Absolutely not. You think I've survived 9 years by being helpless? Eli met Theron's eyes. I know how predators think. I've been prey my whole life. This ends now, or Rowan will never be safe. He's right, Garrett said grimly. Cain won't confess unless he thinks he's winning. We need to give him an opening. Theron looked between them, jaw clenched. Rowan is safer if Cain stopped now, Eli finished. You know that. After a long moment, Theron nodded. We do this carefully. Controlled environment, guards hidden, recording crystal active. At the first sign of real danger. You pull me out. I know. Eli took a shaky breath. When? Tomorrow. The library. I'll arrange for you to be alone. The next evening, Eli sat in Silvercrest's vast library, pretending to read. His heart hammered against his ribs. Behind the shelves, he knew guards were positioned with weapons and a recording crystal that would capture everything said. Theron and Garrett were hidden nearby. The plan was simple. Let Cain approach, provoke a confession, and then end this. Simple. Terrifying. Necessary. The door opened. Cain entered alone, his smile wolfish. There you are. I hoped we might talk privately. Eli set down his book, forcing his hands not to shake. About what? About the truth. Cain circled closer, predator energy radiating from him. About who you really are. Because I know, Eli. I know exactly whose son you are. Yeah. Eli kept his voice steady. And who's that? Chaos. Cain said the name like a cows. The blood brother. The golden warrior who everyone loved more than they loved me. Theron's favorite. The man who stood between me and everything I deserved. So you killed him. I removed him. Cain's smile was cruel. He was too good, too loyal. Theron loved him more than his own blood. I had to eliminate him. The evidence was surprisingly easy to manufacture. Eli's fists clenched. Keep him talking. And my mother? Was she easy to eliminate too? Ah, Elena. Cain sighed almost regretfully. She should have just disappeared quietly. I offered her money, protection, a new life somewhere far away. But she refused. Said she'd prove Cale's innocence, expose the truth. So yes, I gave orders. She was unfortunate collateral. White-hot rage flooded Eli's veins. You murdered her. I protected my interests. Cain leaned against a bookshelf, completely relaxed. And I paid good money to have you eliminated too. Imagine my surprise when you appeared here, alive, throwing yourself between my hired blade and that annoying little prince. You tried to kill Rowan. 3 birds, 1 solution. Cain's voice turned cold. The heir dies, clearing my path to the throne. If an unknown boy dies too, that's just bonus points. Everyone wins. The recording crystal was getting everything. But something in Cain's expression shifted, too relaxed, too confident. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Cain's smile turned predatory. The guards behind the shelves? The recording crystal? I've been playing this game longer than you've been alive, boy. He whistled sharply. The library doors burst open. Cain's mercenaries flooded in, 20 armed men with silver weapons. The hidden guards engaged immediately, but they were outnumbered. Your only mistake, Cain said, drawing a silver dagger, was thinking I'd come unprepared. Chaos erupted. Steel clashed against steel. Theron exploded from cover, shifting mid-leap into a massive black wolf, fangs bared. But Cain's men were ready with silver nets and blades designed specifically to kill wolves. Eli. Rowan's voice cut through the noise. The boy had followed them somehow, was standing in the doorway, frozen in terror. Cain's eyes locked on the prince. Even better. He lunged toward Rowan. Eli didn't think, just moved. He threw himself between them for the second time, felt Cain's blade slash across his shoulder instead of burying in Rowan's chest. Pain exploded. Blood flowed. But Eli stayed standing. You really need to learn, Cain snarled. That heroism just gets you killed. The pack bond flared like wildfire in Eli's chest. He felt it pulse outward, felt every wolf in the territory feel his terror and pain and desperate need. And they answered. Windows shattered as wolves poured into the library from every direction. Elder Kira led the charge, her massive silver form crashing through the main entrance. 50, 60, 70 wolves, the entire pack converging in response to one of their own in danger. The battle turned instantly. Cain's mercenaries were overwhelmed, disarmed, subdued within minutes. Theron, bleeding from silver wounds but still standing, shifted back to human form and pointed at Cain. Hold him. 3 wolves pinned Cain to the floor, fangs at his throat. Garrett retrieved the recording crystal, held it up. We have everything. Every confession. Every crime. Cain's face twisted with rage and fear. You can't prove. Already did. Theron's voice was winter itself. He crossed to where Eli sat against a bookshelf, clutching Rowan protectively despite his bleeding shoulder. The Alpha King pulled them both into his arms. You're safe, Theron whispered. Both of you. I promise. In the background, Cain was dragged away screaming threats and curses. But Eli barely heard. He was too busy holding Rowan, feeling the pack bond thrumming with concern and protection, and realizing that for the first time in 9 years, he'd fought back instead of running. And he'd survived. 3 days after Cain's capture, the great hall trembled with the weight of judgment. Every wolf in Silvercrest territory had come, over 200 bodies packed into the stone chamber, their breath fogging in the cold morning air. Torches cast dancing shadows on ancient walls that had witnessed centuries of pack law, but never a betrayal this deep. Eli stood near the Alpha's throne, his legs still weak from the fight. The silver chains binding Cain Draven clinked as guards dragged him to the center of the hall. Even in defeat, Cain maintained his arrogance, his chin lifted, his smile cold and sharp. This is a farce, Cain announced, his voice echoing off stone. I am royalty. Blood of the founding lines. You cannot. You are accused of murder, conspiracy, and treason. Theron's voice cut through the hall like a blade. The Alpha King sat forward on his throne, his shoulder still bandaged from Cain's silver-coated weapon. Speak your defense or be silent. Cain's eyes swept the crowd, calculating. I served this pack faithfully for 40 years. When I discovered evidence of Kale's treason 15 years ago, I brought it to you, cousin. If that evidence was forged and I maintain it was not, then I was deceived as well. His voice dripped false sincerity. I am a victim of manipulation, not a perpetrator. Murmurs rippled through the assembled wolves. Some looked uncertain. Cain had always been careful, always positioned himself as the loyal cousin, the steady presence beside the throne. Garrett stepped forward, his face grim. The beta carried a leather satchel that he emptied onto a table with deliberate care. These are the original documents used to condemn Kale. His voice carried to every corner of the hall. Our forensic experts have examined them. The ink contains traces of a rare compound, imported from the Southern Territories, available only to nobility. He held up a magnifying lens over one document. Here, hidden in the margin. A seal barely visible. It bears Cain Draven's personal mark. Gasps erupted. Cain's mask slipped for just a moment, rage flashing in his eyes before he smoothed it away. Circumstantial, Cain said smoothly. I handled many documents in my role as advisor. Then explain this. Garrett activated the recording crystal, the magical device that had captured everything in the library 3 nights ago. Cain's voice filled the hall, tinny but unmistakable. Kale was too good, too loyal. Theron loved him more than his own blood. I had to remove him. It was unfortunate about your mother. The silence that followed was absolute. Then the hall exploded. Traitor. Blood betrayer. He murdered a blood brother. Theron raised his hand and the pack fell silent, though fury vibrated in the air like heat. Elias, son of Kale, stepped forward. Eli's heart hammered against his ribs. He felt every eye on him as he moved to the center, facing Cain across 10 feet of cold stone. This close he could smell the man who'd destroyed his family, leather oil and expensive soap, the same scents that had clung to the hunters who killed his mother. Tell them, Theron said quietly. Tell them what you remember. Eli's hands trembled. He curled them into fists, feeling the pack mark on his arm pulse with warmth. Rowan stood near the throne, his small face fierce and encouraging. "I was 5 years old," Eli began, his voice rough. "My mother and I were running. We'd been running for months, ever since." He swallowed hard. "Ever since they executed my father." Cain's lip curled, but he said nothing. "We hid in different territories, never staying long. But they always found us." Eli's voice strengthened. "That last night we were camped in a ravine. I woke up to my mother screaming. She shoved me into a hollow tree, told me to stay hidden no matter what. The hall was so quiet Eli could hear his own heartbeat. I watched through a crack in the bark. There were 3 men. Hunters. They asked her where I was." His voice cracked. "She wouldn't tell them. So they—" He couldn't finish that sentence. "I remember everything about them. Their voices. Their weapons. The smell." He locked eyes with Cain. "The same leather oil you use. The same expensive soap. I didn't understand it then. I was just a kid trying to survive. But I understand now. He sent them. You killed her because she wouldn't give me up." "A child's memory?" Cain sneered, but his composure was fracturing. "You expect this council to condemn me based on a traumatized boy's fantasy? He's lying to gain status, to play on your sympathies." Eli lunged. He didn't think, didn't plan. His body just moved, rage and grief propelling him forward. "You killed her." Guards caught him before he reached Cain, but his fury was genuine, undeniable. Tears streamed down his face as he fought against the hands holding him back. "She was protecting me. He died because of you. Because you couldn't stand that my father was better than you." Theron was beside him suddenly, one hand on his shoulder, grounding him. "Enough," the Alpha King said, his voice cutting through Eli's rage. "The evidence speaks for itself." Elder Kira rose from her seat among the council, her ancient frame somehow commanding despite her age. "I call for judgment. All in favor of a guilty verdict on all counts." Every hand rose. Every single one. "Cain Draven," Kira intoned, her voice carrying the weight of centuries, "you murdered a blood brother. You orphaned a child and sent hunters after him and his mother. You attempted regicide against your Alpha's heir." She paused, letting each crime settle. "The pack demands justice." Theron stepped forward. "Under pack law, you face 2 sentences, execution or eternal exile." His eyes were hard as flint. "But I will not choose your fate. That honor belongs to the one you wronged most." He turned to Eli. "The choice is yours." The hall went utterly still. Eli felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, the expectation hanging heavy in the air. Cain stared at him with naked hatred, probably expecting, hoping for, death. A quick end would be merciful. Eli thought of his mother, of 9 years spent hiding and starving and afraid. He thought of his father, executed based on lies. He looked at Rowan, alive and safe because Eli had made a different choice. "Exile," he said clearly. Shocked murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cain's eyes widened. "You, what?" "Strip him of his wolf," Eli said, his voice stronger now. "Take away everything that makes him pack. Let him live as I lived, alone, powerless, knowing he failed." He met Cain's gaze without flinching. "Death would be too kind. I want him to survive with nothing. Just like he forced me to." Theron's expression showed something like pride. He nodded to Myra, who stepped forward with her ritual tools. "So be it," the Alpha King declared. What followed was brutal. Myra's chants filled the hall as ancient magic tore through Cain's being, severing his connection to the pack bond, to his wolf form, to everything that defined him. Cain screamed, his body convulsing, but the process was irreversible. When it ended, Cain collapsed to the floor, fully human, fully powerless. He looked smaller somehow, diminished. "Take him to the border," Theron commanded. "Cast him into human lands. If he ever returns to pack territory, kill him on sight." As guards dragged the broken man away, Eli felt no triumph, no satisfaction. Just a hollow ache where rage had been. Theron placed a hand on his shoulder. "You chose mercy. That took more strength than choosing death." "I didn't want to become like him," Eli whispered. "You never could," Rowan said, appearing at his other side. The young prince slipped his hand into Eli's. "You're too good." And standing in that hall, Surrounded by the pack that had claimed him, Eli finally let himself believe it might be true. 2 months after the trial, spring arrived in the Northern Territories like a promise kept. Snow melted from the mountain peaks, revealing green meadows dotted with wildflowers. The pack lands transformed from harsh winter white to vibrant life, and with the changing season came changes in Eli himself. He stood in the training yard, wooden practice sword in hand, circling Garrett with focused intensity. The beater grinned, his stance relaxed but ready. "You're getting better." "Almost landed that last strike." "Almost doesn't count," Eli muttered, then lunged. Garrett deflected easily, but his approval was genuine. "You fight like someone who's been hunted your whole life. Every instinct honed for survival." He blocked another strike. "But now you need to learn to fight for something, not just against everything." The words hit deeper than the practice blade ever could. Eli lowered his sword, breathing hard. "I don't know how to do that." "You already do." Garrett nodded toward the edge of the yard where Rowan sat watching, his eyes bright with admiration. "You fight for him. You always have." That afternoon, Theron summoned Eli to his study, a warm room lined with books and maps, smelling of wood smoke and old paper. The Alpha King gestured to a chair across from his desk. "I'm officially naming you as Rowan's guardian and mentor," Theron said without preamble. "It's an honor position, traditionally reserved for blood relatives or proven warriors." Eli's throat tightened. "I'm neither." "You're both." Theron's expression was gentle but firm. "You've proven yourself a dozen times over. And as for blood..." He paused. "My son calls you brother. The pack bond makes it true in ways that matter more than genetics." "I don't know if I'm qualified to." "Eli." Theron leaned forward. "You taught yourself to survive from age 5. You learned to track, to hunt, to read the forest like a language. You have skills most of our trained scouts would envy." His voice softened. "And more importantly, Rowan trusts you. He needs you." Eli looked down at his hands, still calloused from years of rough survival. "What if I fail him?" "Then you'll be like every other parent or mentor in history," Theron said with a slight smile. "We all fail sometimes. What matters is that you try." So Eli tried. He moved into quarters in the royal wing, a room 3 times the size of the cave he'd lived in for 9 months. The bed was too soft, the walls too close. He spent the first week sleeping on the floor by the window, needing to see the sky. But slowly, he adapted. Rowan helped, appearing every morning to drag him to breakfast, chattering about wolf politics and forest gossip that Eli was still learning to navigate. "Luca said you're the best tracker in the pack now," Rowan announced one morning, attacking his porridge with enthusiasm. "Even better than the scouts." "Luca exaggerates," Eli said, but warmth spread through his chest. Luca and Sarah, 2 teenage wolves near Eli's age, had become unlikely friends. Initially wary of the human-born outsider, they'd warmed to him after Eli saved Sarah from a collapsing training structure, his sharp instinct spotting the danger before anyone else. "You're pretty badass for a human," Luca had said afterward, grudging respect in his voice. "I'm not fully human anymore," Eli had replied, noticing how his senses had sharpened in recent weeks. "The bond changed me." It was true. Myra had examined him 3 times, her ancient eyes filled with wonder. "The pack bond is affecting you more than any case I've studied," she told him. "Your father's wolf blood, combined with the emergency ritual, is awakening dormant traits." Eli couldn't fully shift, his body remained frustratingly human, but sometimes his eyes flashed wolf gold in moments of strong emotion. His strength was increasing, his healing accelerating. Once, he'd caught a scent from 2 miles away, startling himself and the hunting party he'd been tracking with. But the changes weren't just physical. Under Theron's gentle persistence and Rowan's stubborn affection, Eli's walls were crumbling. One evening, he asked to visit Kale's burial site. Theron took him personally, just the 2 of them walking through quiet forest to a clearing where a simple stone marker stood among wildflowers. Kale, blood brother and loyal warrior. His honor restored. Theron placed his hand on the stone. "I'm sorry I didn't believe in him. That I didn't protect you after he died." Eli stared at the marker, emotions churning. "He wouldn't want you to carry that guilt." The words surprised him as he spoke them, but they felt true. "He'd want you to move forward. You're wise beyond your years. I had to grow up fast. Eli knelt, touching the cool stone. But maybe that's over now. Not everything healed smoothly. The nightmares still came, vivid flashes of his mother's final moments, the hunters' voices, the endless cold of those years alone. He'd wake gasping, disoriented, reaching for weapons that weren't there. One night, Rowan heard him cry out. The 6-year-old appeared in his doorway. Small and concerned in oversized sleeping clothes. I have nightmares too, Rowan said quietly, climbing onto Eli's bed without asking permission. About the assassins. The knife. He curled against Eli's side. But you're here, so I'm safe. Eli's arms came around the child automatically, protectively. His heart stuttered at the realization. Rowan needed him as much as he needed Rowan. Maybe more. We're both safe, Eli whispered into the darkness. The spring equinox brought the festival of renewal, a massive celebration involving the entire pack. The fortress blazed with torches and magic lights. Music filled the courtyards. Tables groaned under feast foods Eli had never imagined existed. He tried to participate, but the noise and crowds overwhelmed him. Too many voices, too much touch, too many expectations pressing down. He slipped away to a quiet balcony, gulping cold air. You don't have to stay if you're uncomfortable. Eli turned to find Theron behind him, concern in his eyes. I want to, Eli said honestly. I just don't know how. Theron joined him at the railing. Let me tell you about your father. His voice grew distant, warm with memory. Cale struggled with belonging too. He was half human, like you. Never quite fit with full-blood wolves, but too wolf to fit with humans. Did he ever figure it out? He did. Because he let people in. Theron's gaze was knowing. Like you're doing now. Slowly, painfully, but genuinely. Below, someone called for the traditional wolf dance. Rowan appeared on the balcony, determination on his small face. You have to dance, Eli. It's tradition. I don't know how. Nobody cares. Rowan grabbed his hand, tugging with surprising strength. Just move with the pack. So Eli let himself be dragged into the torchlit courtyard. The pack formed circles within circles, moving to drums and ancient songs. Rowan positioned him in the inner ring, and then the dance began. Eli was clumsy, constantly a beat behind. His human body couldn't match the fluid grace of the wolves. But Rowan was laughing, and Luca clapped him on the back when he stumbled, and Sauer showed him the steps with patient gestures. For a moment, brief and shining, Eli forgot to be afraid. Later, alone at the forest edge, he encountered a wild wolf. Not pack, but a stranger passing through territory. His survival instinct screamed danger, but Eli held his ground. The wolf approached slowly, nose twitching. It caught his scent, pack-marked, protected, and recognition flared in its eyes. Then, impossibly, it bowed its head and departed peacefully. Eli stared after it, understanding crystallizing. He wasn't prey anymore. He was pack. Protected. Recognized. That night, Rowan made him promise, a solemn, child-serious vow. You can't ever leave. Brothers stay together. What if something happens? Eli's old fears surfaced. What if I can't keep you safe? Then we protect each other. Rowan's logic was simple, unshakable. That's what family does. The word caught in Eli's throat. Family. He'd lost one, survived without one, and now? You're my family, he said aloud for the first time, and the truth of it nearly broke him. Rowan beamed. Always. Later, much later, Eli stood on the balcony watching the celebration wind down. Theron found him there. Do you regret it? The Alpha King asked quietly. Saving Rowan that day. Eli considered the question, really considered it. The pain, the fear, the complete upheaval of his carefully maintained isolation. No, he said finally. It's the first choice I made that wasn't about survival. Theron's hand settled on his shoulder, warm and steady. You gave us a gift that day. You gave me my son. And I gained another. Eli's throat tightened. I don't know how to be a son. You don't have to be anything but yourself. Theron's voice was gentle. That's enough. You've always been enough. The pack mark on Eli's arm pulsed with warmth, the bond steady and real. He wasn't fully healed, probably would never be fully healed. But he was learning to live again, to trust again, to hope again. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. 6 months after the attack that changed everything, the anniversary arrived with the weight of ceremony. The pack was preparing for the ritual of scars, an ancient tradition honoring those who sacrificed themselves for others. Eli would be the youngest person ever recognized in the ritual's 300-year history. He stood in his quarters while Myra fussed over ceremonial robes, deep blue fabric embroidered with silver thread in patterns that told stories of courage and protection. The cloth felt foreign against his skin, too fine, too formal. "I don't feel like a hero," Eli muttered, fidgeting as she adjusted the collar. "I just reacted." Myra's ancient eyes met his with knowing warmth. "The ritual isn't about glory, child. It's about remembering that pain and choosing to live anyway. Choosing to love anyway." She touched the scar on his chest where the assassin's blade had pierced him. "This mark proves you know what it costs to protect someone else." It didn't feel like a choice at the time. That's what makes it heroic. She stepped back, examining her work. True courage isn't the absence of fear. It's moving forward despite it. Outside his window, wolves gathered in the great courtyard, over 300 of them, with representatives from allied packs traveling from distant territories. The ceremony would be witnessed by more people than Eli had seen in his entire life. His hands shook. He curled them into fists, feeling the pack mark on his forearm pulse with steady warmth. A knock at the door. Rowan burst in without waiting for permission, now 7 years old and growing fast. "Are you ready? Everyone's waiting." "I'm not sure I can do this." "Yes, you can." Rowan's certainty was absolute. He grabbed Eli's hand. "You're the bravest person I know. You just have to let everyone else see it too." The great hall had been transformed. Hundreds of candles created a river of light leading to the center where an ancient stone circle marked the ceremonial space. Wolves in both human and animal form lined the walls, their eyes reflecting candlelight like stars. Eli walked the path, acutely aware of every gaze following him. His instincts screamed to run, to hide, to disappear. But Rowan walked beside him, small hand gripping his, and that anchor kept him moving forward. Theron stood at the center in formal alpha regalia, his presence commanding yet gentle. "We gather to honor those who shield the defenseless. Those who place others above themselves. Those who remind us what it means to be pack." The ceremony began with traditional songs, ancient words in a language Eli barely understood. Then Theron called forward those who would speak. Garrett testified first, describing the attack, the assassins, the moment Eli threw himself between Blade and Prince. His voice carried pride that made Eli's chest tight. Then Rowan stepped forward. The hall went silent. No one had expected the young prince to speak, but he'd been preparing in secret for weeks. His small voice rang out clear and determined. "Eli didn't know me when he saved me. He didn't have to do anything." Rowan's gaze found Eli in the crowd. "But he threw himself between me and a knife anyway, because it was the right thing to do." Taz threatened Eli's composure. He blinked hard. He's been alone his whole life, but he still protected someone else's family before he had one of his own. Rowan's voice wavered slightly. "That's the bravest thing I know. And now he's my brother. My family. And I'll protect him just like he protected me." The hall erupted in approving howls, the traditional wolf response to truth spoken from the heart. Elder Kira rose, commanding silence with her presence alone. "I call for the ancient acknowledgement. Let the wolves speak." What happened next stole Eli's breath. Every wolf in the hall shifted to their animal forms. The transformation rippled through the crowd like wind through grass, bones reshaping, fur sprouting, human forms replaced by lupine power. Hundreds of wolves, from the smallest yearling to the most ancient elder, all in their true forms. And one by one, they approached Eli. Each wolf touched their muzzle to his outstretched hands, the sacred gesture of recognition. "We see your spirit. We honor your choice. We claim you as ours." Eli stood frozen as the procession continued. 5 wolves, 10, 50, 100. His face was wet with tears he couldn't stop. The overwhelming acceptance, the physical proof that he belonged, it shattered every defense he'd ever built. When the last wolf completed the ritual, Theron stepped forward carrying a long object wrapped in doeskin leather. He unwound the cloth to reveal a sword, ancient, perfectly balanced, the blade etched with runes Eli couldn't read. "This was your father's war blade," Theron said, his voice thick with emotion. "Cale carried it for 20 years, through countless battles and challenges. He died believing his family dishonored, his legacy destroyed." He held the sword out horizontally, offering it. "But you've restored his honor. You embody everything he stood for: courage, loyalty, sacrifice." Eli's hands shook as he accepted the blade. The weight felt right, as if the sword recognized him. "I don't know if I'm worthy of this," he whispered. "You've always been worthy." Theron's hand gripped his shoulder. "You just didn't know it yet." As Eli held the sword, something shifted inside him. The pack bond flared suddenly, painfully bright. His vision blurred. Heat surged through his veins like liquid fire. His eyes blazed gold, not just a flicker this time, but sustained, burning. Claws extended from his fingertips. His teeth sharpened. The transformation was incomplete, frozen halfway between human and wolf, but undeniable. Gasps echoed through the hall. Myra moved closer, her expression awed. "The bond has fully integrated. His father's dormant bloodline is awakening." She touched his arm gently, and at her touch, the transformation eased back. "He's more wolf than we realized." The ritual, the sacrifice, the pack acceptance, it all accelerated the process. Panic clawed at Eli's chest. "What's happening to me?" Rowan pushed through the crowd, grabbing his hand without fear. "It's okay. You're still you. Just more." Theron raised his voice, commanding the pack's attention. "Elias, son of Cale, you are recognized as bloodkin to the throne. You are Rowan's sworn protector and brother in all ways that matter." His eyes glistened. "And you are my son, not by birth, but by choice. By sacrifice. By love." The words broke something fundamental in Eli. Every wall, every defense, every carefully maintained distance collapsed. He fell into Theron's arms, sobbing like the child he'd never been allowed to be. "I've got you," Theron murmured, holding him tight. "You're safe. You're home. You're loved." The pack howled, a chorus of acceptance that shook the rafters and echoed through the mountains. Eli felt it in his bones, in his blood, in the mark on his arm that pulsed in rhythm with hundreds of other hearts. The ceremony transitioned into celebration. Food appeared, tables laden with roasted meats, fresh bread, fruits Eli had never tasted. Wolves in human form surrounded him, sharing stories and laughter. Luca challenged him to an arm wrestling match. Sarah taught him a traditional pack song. Garrett presented him with a custom-made training harness. For the first time in his life, Eli initiated touch. He hugged Luca back when the younger wolf clasped his shoulder. He laughed at Sarah's jokes without holding back. He let himself be pulled into the celebration, becoming part of the joyous chaos rather than watching from the edges. Late that night, as the celebration finally wound down, Eli found himself in Cale's memorial garden with Theron and Kira. The ancient she-wolf's eyes held depths of knowledge that made Eli feel simultaneously young and understood. "I spent 9 years thinking I was alone," Eli said quietly. "That no one cared if I lived or died." "You were never alone." Kira's voice was surprisingly gentle. "The wolves were always watching." Eli turned to her. "Why? Why did you care about one lost kid?" "Because we knew who you were. We knew your father's sacrifice. He died protecting pack secrets even under torture." She moved closer. "And we saw yours, long before you saved Rowan." "I don't understand." "The wolves honored you before that day," she continued. "We left game for you to find. We scared off predators that stalked your territory. We guided you to safe places when winter storms came." Her ancient eyes gleamed. "We couldn't interfere directly, pack law forbids it, but we never abandoned you." The revelation hit like a physical blow. "You've been protecting me all along. You are pack blood. You always have been." Kira touched her muzzle to his hand one more time. "You thought you survived because you were strong alone. But you survived because you were loved, even when you didn't know it." Understanding crashed over Eli in waves. All those times he'd found fresh kills he hadn't tracked. The way predators always avoided his territory. The sheltered cave he'd found that seemed almost designed for human habitation. He hadn't been alone. He'd never been alone. A wolf howl echoed from the distant forest, haunting, beautiful, familiar. Eli recognized it instantly. The same howl he'd heard countless times during his years of solitude. A sound he'd thought meant danger but now understood. Differently. You're not alone. You're ours. You're safe. Without thinking, Eli tilted his head back and howled in response. His voice came out strange, part human, part wolf, entirely his own. The pack bond surged, and suddenly the entire pack was howling with him, their voices blending into a chorus that said everything words couldn't. You belong. Your family. Forever. Rowan appeared at his side, eyes shining. See? I told you. Your family. You always will be. Eli lifted the boy onto his shoulders, something he'd done dozens of times now without thinking. Always. They rejoined what remained of the celebration, truly part of the pack, truly home. 3 months later, Eli stood in the training yard with a group of young wolves, showing them how to track wounded prey without alerting it. Rowan sat nearby, absorbing every word. A commotion at the gate drew their attention. Guards brought forward a small figure, a child, maybe 8 years old, filthy and terrified. An orphan found on the borders, alone and starving. Eli's heart clenched with recognition. He saw himself in those frightened eyes, that defensive posture, that desperate attempt to disappear. He approached slowly, non-threateningly, and knelt to the child's level. I know you're afraid. But you're safe now. The child's voice was barely a whisper. How do you know? Eli smiled, real and warm and certain. Because I was you once. Alone, scared, sure I'd never be safe again. He offered his hand. But they saved me. And now I'm going to help save you. Let me show you what family means. The child hesitated, then placed a small, trembling hand in his. That night, Eli sat with his family. Theron, Rowan, Garrett, Myra, Luca, Sarah, and 100 others who'd become essential to his existence. The new orphan slept nearby, already protected by 3 wolves lying guard. His chest was warm with the pack mark, the bond steady and eternal. He thought back to the boy who'd hidden behind dumpsters and trusted no one. That boy was gone, replaced by someone who knew love, who understood belonging, who could offer others the sanctuary he'd found. Rowan fell asleep against his shoulder, and Eli didn't pull away. He'd learned the greatest lesson: belonging isn't found, it's built. One choice, one sacrifice, one moment of courage at a time. The wolves had answered long before Eli even asked. You are ours, and we are yours, forever. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Every child deserves to know they're not alone. Every person deserves to find their pack. And sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is simply let ourselves be loved. What story of unexpected belonging has shaped your life? Share your own moment of finding family in the comments below. Your story might be the light someone else needs to see today.